Welcome to the deep dive. I want you to close your eyes for a second. Well, not if you're driving, obviously. Keep your eyes on the road.
Yeah, please do.
But if you can't, I really want you to picture this scene. It is 1964. You're standing in the absolute heart of Kansas City. And this is an incredibly gritty, really tense transition period. The historians call it the post-Pendergast era.
Which is such a crucial detail to set the stage for everything we're talking about today. I mean, for decades, Tom Pendergast ran this political machine that completely controlled Kansas City.
Right.
We're talking absolute, total dominance over the police, the local government, the concrete businesses, the bootlegging operations, all of it. But by 1964, that old world corruption is really fading out. It's crumbling.
Yeah, and it's leaving behind this massive, really dangerous power vacuum. And this is right at the exact same time that modern civil unrest is starting to bubble up across the country. So imagine the air in the city probably smells like a mix of leaded exhaust fumes and the sprawling, endless livestock pens of the West Bottoms. And right in the middle of this labyrinth of abandoned silos, rail yards, and forgotten Prohibition-era smuggling tunnels, an absolute monster is operating.
It's a remarkably vivid, almost suffocating atmosphere. And the sources we are looking at today, they match that tone perfectly.
Oh, totally.
We are diving into a stack of documents that genuinely feel like they were just, pulled out of a heavily redacted classified evidence locker in the basement of some old police precinct.
Our mission for this deep dive is to really explore Chapter 4 of this serialized story, which is titled The Shadow of the Outfit. And the stack of sources we have today is just wild.
It really is.
We've got excerpts from the 1964 series Bible, a chilling collection of classified police memos, intercepted mob wiretaps, and a secret autopsy report that are collectively known as the Mulberry Harvest.
Plus, we have that deeply disturbing document.
Yes, the one outlining something called the Butcher's Masterpiece. We are going to uncover exactly what happens when a serial killer's horrifying underground experiments force both the law and the lawless to react.
And to really understand the gravity of these documents, we have to establish the status quo as it's outlined in that series Bible. Because we have officially entered phase 2 of this narrative arc.
Right, things have shifted.
The hunt for the elusive Butcher of the Bottoms, who is strongly believed to be a disgraced underground surgeon named Dr. Eris Thorne, has completely shifted. It has gone underground, both literally and figuratively.
And the stakes could not possibly be more personal for our three main protagonists. First, you have Detective Jack Sullivan, Sully.
Right.
Sully is this 54-year-old chain-smoking relic of the old Kansas City Police Department. He grew up in that Pendergast machine. He has a very, let's say, flexible moral compass.
Very flexible.
Yeah, he knows all the mobsters by their first names, but the Butcher offends his basic old-school sense of order. Then you have Detective Marcus Thorne, who we should probably clarify has absolutely no relation to the killer.
Yeah, that's a good point to make. Marcus is a completely different breed of cop. He is one of the first black homicide detectives on the KCPD force, which in 1964 means he is fighting an uphill battle against systemic hurdles every single day.
Every day.
He's a brilliant, college-educated investigator who relies entirely on forensic science and something he calls behavioral probability.
Hold on, let's actually define that for a second. Behavioral probability. Because in 1964, most cops are relying on gut instinct and shoe leather. What exactly is Marcus doing?
He's essentially pioneering early statistical modeling and psychological profiling. He looks at crime scenes not just for fingerprints, but for mathematical patterns. He's trying to calculate the statistical likelihood of human actions to predict where the killer will strike next.
Wow.
Which is incredibly radical for a 1960s beat cop, and it puts him in a direct psychological chess match with the Butcher.
And rounding out that trio is Eleanor Vance, a relentless investigative reporter for the Kansas City Star. She acts as the public eye, and she was actually the very first person to spot the serial pattern of these killings.
A pattern the police department is now actively trying to bury.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the first document we need to look at shows exactly how the KCPD is trying to bury it. We have Source Document M, which is an official internal KCPD memo from a Captain H. Miller at Central Division.
Yeah?
It is a direct stand-down order reassigning Case 641029, and Captain Miller is not messing around with the punishments here.
Not at all. The bureaucratic hammer just comes down with terrifying force. Marcus Thorne is officially banished to the basement archives to work dead-end cold cases. Sully is stripped of his investigative duties entirely and bumped all the way back down to walking a uniform precinct beat. They're explicitly ordered in writing to cease all unauthorized excursions into the West Bottoms tunnels.
And Captain Miller spells out exactly why he's doing this. The memo states that Eleanor's paper, the Kansas City Star, is asking way too many questions.
Yeah.
Marcus's forensic theories are apparently causing a massive public panic down at Union Station, which is bad for business and bad for the mayor. So Miller delivers a very specific, really chilling threat. He says if he sees one more unauthorized report mentioning the phrase surgical precision, Marcus and Sully will be walking a beat in the snow by November.
It's a classic cover-up driven entirely by public relations panic. The city leadership just wants to project this image of a safe, modernizing metropolis. But the ultimate irony here is something we really need to highlight.
Right.
The Kansas City Police Department, in their desperate attempt to save face and shut down these forensic theories, has inadvertently become the butcher's greatest protector.
Wait, so by trying to avoid a PR nightmare, the police are basically building a protective fence around a serial killer?
Yeah. That is exactly what they are doing. By throwing up this massive political wall in front of their best detectives, the police are essentially handing a horrifying predator a free pass.
Wow.
They are giving him an uninterrupted, legally protected sanctuary to continue his work down in the darkness of the West Bottoms.
I mean, just imagine the sheer teeth-grinding frustration of that. With absolute scientific certainty that a killer is operating right under the city's nose. You know he is actively harvesting people.
Yeah.
But you are legally blindfolded by your own boss, forced to push paper at a desk just to keep up appearances for the local politicians.
It's infuriating, but it perfectly captures that 1960s institutional mindset where maintaining the illusion of order was often prioritized over actually solving complex, terrifying crimes. The system is fundamentally broken.
Yeah.
And that breakdown leaves a massive power vacuum in the West Bottoms. And as anyone familiar with the history of Kansas City knows, whenever there is a power vacuum, organized crime steps right in.
Which brings us to the criminal underworld. Because the cops might be ignoring the butcher, but the mob, locally known as the Outfit, certainly isn't. Document N is an incredibly revealing piece of mob intelligence.
It really is.
It's an intercepted, coded wiretap transcript from a KCPD listening post at a place called the Blue Note Lounge.
We get to hear a candid conversation between a mob boss named Big Sal Marino and one of his street lieutenants, Johnny Two-Tone. And right away, we see the butcher through an entirely different lens. It isn't about public safety or morality for the mob. It's purely about economics. Big Sal is absolutely furious. He says he doesn't care if the cops are pulling back because this killer, who he refers to as a ghost, is costing the outfit $10,000 a week in lost freight.
$10,000 a week in 1964? We have to adjust that for inflation to really grasp it. That's close to $100,000 a week in today's money.
It's a huge hit.
It is a staggering financial bleed, and the reason they're losing that money is just wild. Big Sal complains that nobody wants to work the night shift down in the bottoms anymore. The dock workers, the smugglers, the muscle, they are all absolutely terrified of being turned into a science project.
What's fascinating here is the sheer clash of cultures. You were looking at the old-school violence of the mob colliding head-on with the new nightmare of the butcher.
Right.
Big Sal views this as a standard turf war. To him, it's just a logistical problem hurting his bottom line.
Yeah.
He genuinely thinks he's dealing with a rival bookie or some rogue gang trying to muscle in on his territory.
Right, because Johnny Two-Tone reports that his guys found another entrance to the underground tunnels right behind an abandoned cold storage plant on Mulberry Street. And Sal's solution is so incredibly simple, so violently old school.
Oh, yeah.
He tells Johnny to take 3 guys with heavy hardware, no talking, just lead. And he actually says, if you find a guy in a lab coat, you don't bring him to me, you leave him for the rats. We're taking the bottoms back tonight.
It's a staggering display of fatal arrogance. He genuinely believes that Tommy guns and brute force can solve a problem of biological architecture.
Exactly.
He completely fails to comprehend the scale, the intellect, and the sheer predatory nature of what is waiting for them in the dark.
But let's look at exactly how that played out. Here's where it gets really interesting, because the next source in our stack, Document O, details the Mulberry Street massacre.
Yeah, this card is dark.
These are the KCPD crime scene photo descriptions from the lower level of Warehouse C, and I have to warn you, they are visceral. They are genuinely hard to read.
The documents confirm that the 3 victims found in that basement were indeed Marino's enforcers. This was the heavily armed hit squad sent to take back the bottoms.
Right.
But the scene notes immediately dispel any notion of a shootout. There was no grand mobster gunfight. They were ambushed in complete darkness. The police specifically noted that the men didn't even get the chance to take their guns off safe.
Think about the tactical nightmare of that. You are an elite mob enforcer. You walk into a subterranean meat locker, guns drawn, ready for a fight, and you are neutralized instantly by a guy in a lab coat.
Insane.
And what the butcher did to them afterward, it is pure nightmare fuel. Victim 1 was found suspended from an industrial meat hook. But it wasn't just a brutal display of violence. The police noted incredibly specific, meticulous surgical incisions made all along the victim's spine.
Yeah.
And victims 2 and 3 were positioned very deliberately around him. The report describes their arrangement as a grotesque surgical theater.
Which ties perfectly back to the butcher's established modus operandi from the series Bible, his use of what he calls the gallery. He doesn't just discard bodies, he stages his victims to tell a story. But in this case, he went a massive step further. He left a literal message scrawled on the warehouse wall in thick industrial grease.
The message read, "The mob trades in lead. I trade in legacy. You are the raw material I've been waiting for."
That message is a psychological goldmine. It tells us everything we need to know about the butcher's massive, unwavering ego.
Oh, absolutely.
Faced with an armed hit squad of trained killers, his instinct wasn't to flee or hide. His instinct was to harvest them. He views organized crime not as a legitimate threat to his life, but as a highly convenient delivery service, bringing prime, healthy raw materials right to his doorstep.
Big Sal told his guys to leave a guy in the lab coat for the rats. He had no idea the guy in the lab coat was looking at his elite hitmen like they were a free grocery delivery.
Exactly.
And that word the butcher used, legacy. It completely shifts the paradigm of what we are dealing with. Which brings us to the absolute climax of this deep dive. If you thought the crime scene in Warehouse C was disturbing, Document Q is going to stick with you for a very long time.
It is chilling.
This is the document titled The Butcher's Masterpiece, The Anatomy of a Modern Monster.
This is a highly confidential, totally off-the-books autopsy supplement. It is written on personal, monogrammed stationery by Dr. Abernathy, the chief medical examiner for Kansas City, and sent directly marked eyes only to Detective Marcus Thorne.
Dr. Abernathy is terrified. He literally writes, "If the captain saw this, he'd burn the building down to hide it."
Yeah.
That is how dangerous this specific medical information is. Abernathy is examining deceased subject 641102, who we now know as Johnny Two-Tone, the mob lieutenant from the wiretap. And Abernathy reveals that Johnny didn't die from a gunshot, and he didn't die from a beating.
No, the autopsy reveals he died from systemic shock during an unauthorized surgical integration. The butcher didn't just murder this mobster. He strapped him to a table and actively tried to upgrade him.
The medical nuances here are just staggering for the time period. Dr. Abernathy found porcine pig heart valves stitched directly into Johnny Two-Tone's carotid artery, and he used high-grade white silk to do it.
And here's the medical anomaly that really pushes this from a simple murder investigation into terrifying, uncharted territory.
Yeah.
Dr. Abernathy notes that the silk stitches were absolutely flawless. But even more shocking, under the microscope, there was actual evidence of cellular transition taking place.
Wow.
The butcher's utilizing a highly advanced chemical cocktail. Abernathy suspects it's a heavily modified derivative of sodium pentothal mixed with an unknown agent to prevent tissue rejection in real time.
Let's pause and really contextualize what that means for 1964. Sodium pentothal was commonly used as a truth serum or an early anesthetic, but using a derivative to stop white blood cells from attacking foreign pig tissue,
It's unheard of.
that is practically science fiction for the era. I mean, the medical establishment hadn't even performed the first successful human-to-human heart transplant at this point in history. That wouldn't happen until 1967 in South Africa.
Right.
The best doctors in the world were struggling to keep transplant patients alive for a few days in sterile, state-of-the-art hospitals. And this guy is successfully performing cross-species integrations in a dirty, unmapped basement under a warehouse. How does this level of science make him different from a typical serial killer?
It separates him entirely from the archetype of the chaotic, disorganized madman throwing body parts together in a frenzy. He is a disgraced but clearly visionary surgeon, practicing advanced transplant and immunosuppression surgery decades ahead of his time.
Yeah.
And we see his terrifying logic in upgrading his victim profile. He moved from targeting vulnerable, sick transients on the street to ambushing hardened, well-fed mobsters. He didn't do it out of malice toward the mob. He did it because the mobsters were physically healthier. They were stronger. They provided superior spare parts for his work.
Abernathy ends his letter to Marcus with a conclusion that just sends chills down your spine. He says he's not building a gallery anymore, Marcus. He's building a masterpiece.
Because he is no longer just making twisted art. He is attempting to reconstruct humanity from the ground up. He is trying to forcefully, biologically evolve the human architecture.
It's insane.
It is a level of megalomania and God complex that is almost impossible to comprehend.
And what makes it so incredibly terrifying is that right now, nobody is stopping him. The cops are benched. The mob is literally being harvested. Who is actually left to stand in this guy's way?
No one official, that's for sure.
Which leads us to Document P, Eleanor's secret meeting. Because the system has completely failed, our protagonists realize they have to take matters into their own hands. The scene is set at the Liberty Memorial overlook at night. Eleanor Vance and Marcus Thorne are meeting in secret.
They are now officially rogue. The political wall erected by the KCPD worked exactly as intended.
Yeah.
Eleanor tells Marcus that her editor killed her story about the surgical precision entirely. How does a story like that get killed in a major 1964 newspaper? She suspects someone very high up, either the mayor's office protecting the city's tourism image or the outfit threatening the paper's delivery trucks put the squeeze on the star.
Right.
Meanwhile, Marcus confirms that Sully is completely broken. He's been sidelined and is currently drinking himself into a stupor at a local dive bar called the Peanut, while Marcus is chained to a desk filing cold case paperwork.
But Eleanor, being the relentless bulldog reporter she is, didn't let a killed story stop her from digging. She went back to the city's architectural blueprints, and she found something massive.
It really did.
There is a specialized, deeply hidden industrial refrigeration unit located directly under Warehouse C. It does not exist on any official city maps, and it is being powered by an illegal, off-the-books electrical line drawing a massive amount of juice from the city grid.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the tactical reality of their situation becomes horrifyingly clear. Eleanor and Marcus have deduced that this secret refrigeration unit is the new gallery.
Yeah.
The butcher absolutely requires that intense, continuous cold to keep his harvested tissue from decaying while he performs his lengthy surgeries.
And Marcus, whose entire worldview is based on calculating behavioral probability, realizes exactly what just happened. When Big Sal sent that hit squad into Warehouse C,
They literally walked right into the butcher's kitchen.
Yeah.
Marcus is looking at the mathematical odds, and they're terrifyingly stacked against them. They have no KCPD backup. They have no badges, no official authority to even be investigating this. And their enemy, who is already a borderline medical genius, just acquired 3 prime specimens of healthy raw material to finish his horrific masterpiece.
So what does this all mean? When we pull back and look at all these incredibly dense atmospheric sources together, we can distill one central, chilling takeaway for you. The Butcher of the Bottoms has evolved.
He really has.
This is no longer a story about a serial killer murdering people for the sake of twisted underground art. He has fundamentally shifted his goal to forced biological evolution. And the absolute worst part, the collision of the KCPD's desperate, image-obsessed bureaucracy and the mob's foolish old-world hubris hasn't slowed him down for a single second.
Not at all.
It has only fed him. It has given the monster the privacy, the time, and the physical materials he desperately needs to perfect his dark science.
Which leaves us with a totally new, incredibly unsettling implication to consider as we wrap up. We've been asking how Marcus and Eleanor, 2 rogue citizens with no backup, can possibly stop a monster who is successfully rewriting human biology in a basement.
You're right.
But looking at the sheer, undeniable medical success of his masterpiece in 1964, maybe the more terrifying question is this. What happens if the United States government, deep in the paranoia of the Cold War, or the top bosses of the National Syndicate decide they don't actually want to stop him?
Oh, man.
If you find a guy who can perfectly graft animal organs into human soldiers or aging mob bosses without rejection, do you put him in a jail cell? Or do you put him on a payroll?
Wow. That completely changes the stakes. If the butcher becomes an asset instead of a target, you don't just have a serial killer anymore. You have an industry.
Exactly.
It's a terrifying thought to leave you with. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive through the shadows of the West Bottoms. Keep your eyes open, trust your instincts, and always remember to keep questioning the shadows. We'll see you next time.